this is the iPhone 16 in ultramarine.
Ultramarine.
It looks amazing.
It
I really
really
like
does.
it.
Yeah.
And you know what? The amount of features that this iPhone comes with makes justifying that extra price for the Pro a little bit harder.
Yep. I agree.
Apple did a really good job with the 16, and we're going to explain why.
Let's talk about it.
Let's do it.
Now, of course, the first thing you'll notice is that the fact that the design got a little bit different. Now, they didn't go too far from the iPhone look that we've known and loved from previous years, but they kept the front glass, of course, 6.1 inch, same size, frosted glass on the back, which is also on the 15. Colors are great, but we'll talk about that in a second. Flat edges on the side, aluminum enclosure, not sharp, not also fully rounded like the iPhone 11 that we've seen. And personally, the camera system redesign, I love. Now, it does give you that feel of an iPhone 10 camera system.
I loved it. I love the iPhone 10.
But it worked. Exactly. I 100% agree. I think it looks a lot better. So overall, I think there's improvements for sure. And it's one of those things that, I mean, how much can you change on a design and not feel like it's not an iPhone anymore? So there's limits on how much they can change, but I think they did great.
Yeah, that ultramarine color, by the way, if you're interested in buying the 16, that ultramarine color is by far the best one.
Oh, yeah, dude.
Yeah.
It looks great.
Yeah, so when you first get your iPhone and you open the box, you're presented with the back of the phone.
Right.
To see the color right away. The first thing I said as soon as I opened the box, this makes my 16 Pro Max look boring. Yeah. The Pro colors have been really boring, and I would take an ultramarine colored titanium iPhone 16 Pro
Yeah.
over the color selection that we have right now.
Dude, that would go hard.
100%. Yeah. The ultramarine color is stunning, and I also have to say, there should also be ultramarine stickers in this box,
Yep.
but there's not.
No stickers at all.
Shame on Apple for that one.
If you're buying an iPhone for the stickers, then don't.
Ultramarine stickers would also slap just as hard as the phone, but the color, Apple actually absolutely nailed it. It looks and feels so good in the hand too.
Right. I agree. And honestly, you got to give it to them because not only the design got better, but you also have the action button and you have the camera control button that's on the 16 Pro.
Yep.
So they didn't keep it exclusive, and we've talked about this, but they didn't keep it exclusive with the 16 Pro. They included that on the 16. So the build quality, the design, I think is top.
Yeah.
I think it's on top of the line for sure.
And taking those additional hardware features that we've normally seen Apple keep exclusive to the Pro for at least a year,
right,
makes like the majority of customers who are going to buy the entry-level iPhone, it's just that much better for them.
100%. You're going to be satisfied.
Yeah. All right, now let's talk about the display on the standard iPhone 16, because you already know I had my reservations. What was we've been using this iPhone for a little bit now. What was the first thing I texted you about whenever this was coming in?
It's got 60 hertz.
Yep. Yep. I texted him and I said, this phone is $799 because this is the 128 gigabyte model. After tax, it's somewhere like $840.
Right.
And I literally texted and I was like, this phone is $840 for a 60 hertz display.
Yeah.
Now, as far as the display quality, it's still fantastic.
Right.
It's the Super Retina XDR that Apple calls it. It's OLED. It has the same pixel density as the Pro model.
Right.
Which is really, really good. So it is a great display. But as far as where it's going to differentiate, where it's going to be different in lesser ways, is the refresh rate. So the Pros come with the LTPO display.
Right.
That's going to allow them to have that variable refresh rate between 1 to 120. And that's also going to enable always on display.
Right.
So the 16 doesn't get always on.
Right.
And it doesn't get the high refresh rate.
Yeah, and it feels like a downside, but if you're someone that cares about battery life, these are the key features that allow you to save battery on your phone. And Apple advertises that the phones, the 16s and the 16 Pros, have better battery life than last year's. And that is true. We did verify the batteries are slightly bigger, but even just the way they consume the battery, it's a lot better. So if you're concerned about the battery life on this phone because you've had a bad iPhone with bad battery, this is not be the case in this one because you're going to get really good battery life, at least a day worth of use for sure.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, it's still 2024.
Yeah.
And here we are with a flagship iPhone. The Pro is not the only flagship. I don't care what anyone says. Here we are with a flagship iPhone that does not have a 120 hertz display.
That's still true.
Here we are.
And if you're wondering if this phone is fast, answer is yes. But here's the thing about performance, because Apple is advertising now the chip A18 compared to the 16 Pro with the A18 Pro. It is good though, just because last year, if you remember, with the 15 and the 15 Pro, the 15 Pro got the A17 Pro, the 15 got the A16. So the previous year's flagship chip.
So confusing.
It's very weird.
So confusing.
So it's good that they got the new chip. It's a brand new chip for the 16. Even though it's not as powerful as the 16 Pro, the iPhone 16 Pro's chip, it's so good. And honestly, it's one of those things that you're not gonna see any hiccups. You're not gonna see any stutter. The phone is gonna perform really well. And if anything, I don't know if we're gonna see the full potential as of today, just because there's some things that are missing. But so far, I think it's really good.
Yeah, yeah. So and both are 3 nanometer,
3 nanometer,
right?
Yeah.
The A18 Pro is a little bit more powerful, but still both 3 nanometer, which is great. And something that's really interesting is regardless of which iPhone 16 you get,
Yeah.
you could get the lowest storage iPhone 16 or the highest storage iPhone 16 Pro, and they're all going to come with 8 gigs of RAM. Most likely because they need to support the AI features coming with Apple Intelligence. But again, it's a little bit of a frustrating point because we're probably getting close to 1 month now since these launched.
Yeah.
And there is no sign of Apple Intelligence, at least in the stable software. Now, if
Right,
you're willing
right.
to install beta software, there are some Apple Intelligence features in beta, but you shouldn't have to install beta software almost 1 month after a new device drops.
For something that they advertise as being part of the phone.
Yeah, the first thing you see when you pull up the iPhone 16 on Apple's website is Hello Apple Intelligence. And it's nowhere on this phone. If you are a regular customer who's going to walk into the store and buy it, there is no semblance of Apple Intelligence on it whatsoever.
Yeah.
Still.
So it's very disappointing. It's still a powerful phone, but it's very disappointing that they're not including that feature. And the other side too is, we have the new chip, the A18. And I have this feeling, and I'm just speculating. I know.
Uh-oh.
And I just have this one gut feeling that I wonder if the A18 chip is just a rebrand of the A17 Pro chip of last year's
I
phone.
knew you were going there.
Who knows? I could be wrong, and I'll take it if I'm wrong. But come on, they just gotta do better.
Yeah. Now, let's talk about the camera. You already mentioned that the design was kind of redesigned, right? Kind of resembles the iPhone 10.
Yeah.
But as far as hardware goes, we're looking at a 48 megapixel wide angle that Apple has dubbed Fusion camera for this year, right?
Hey man, Dragon Ball.
Yeah. And a 12 megapixel ultra wide
Right.
capable of shooting macro photos, which I believe is new for the 16.
Yes.
Right?
yes.
So last year's 15 could not shoot macro photos.
You can take up close pictures.
Yeah. This
Right.
year's 16 does.
Right.
And I like the photos and videos that it's produced so far. Yeah.
It's really interesting because it is technically a different camera system from the iPhone 15 of last year. It's also a camera system that's different from the 16 Pro that came alongside with this phone. If you look at the specs, it'll throw you off because a lot of the specs look very similar to last
Eerily
year's.
identical to the 15.
Right,
Yeah.
to last year's phone. And some of the specs look better than the 16 Pro, for example. And we did test this. If you take a picture with the wide angle on this camera, the low light is a lot better. You have an aperture that's bigger on the 16 versus the 16 Pro, so you will take better low light pictures on this phone. You have a 2x optical looking telephoto. So it's not a telephoto that actually uses a different lens, but it just zooms in. But because it's got the pixel binning, it goes from 48 to 12 if you're using 1x, and it goes from 24 to 12 if you're using the 2x. So you're still not losing quality, and it looks pretty good, but you don't have a genuine optical zoom on this phone. So those are things to consider for sure. We did test it. We had a lot of fun. It's just one of those things that we've said this many times. The cameras are going to be good. The cameras are going to do a great job, but nothing's revolutionary anymore. You don't have new features that make you go crazy or that even stand out. Everything's just average at this point. And it's not a bad thing. Average does not mean that it's bad. It's just not different and not unique.
Yeah.
So
The iPhones, like everyone has always kind of revered the iPhones for the point and shoot.
right.
And I think Apple is now focusing on the software in terms of like the photographic styles and stuff. We touched
Yeah.
on this in our pro review, but they're giving a lot of ability
Right.
back to the user of the phone to kind of adjust their photographic styles.
I agree. Yeah, the software features are great.
Yeah.
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 Now, one thing I'll say is when it comes to the camera button, I honestly wish I could have set this on the 16 Pro, but I didn't realize until having more time to test it. The positioning is interesting, and you'll see this if you have a 16 or a 16 Pro. depending on the size of your hands, when you're holding the phone, now personally, I'll hold the phone without putting any fingers over the screen because I want to see the full picture. I want to see the full preview. So I'm using my index finger to reach for that camera button, and it's too far out.
Yeah.
It just won't reach. You kind of have to like either move your hand above the phone or get your other fingers in front of the screen and kind of block the view. And that happens on both the 16 Pro, 16, 16 Plus, 16 Pro Max. So the distance between the corner and the button is the same. I don't know why they kept that length. I don't know why it's specifically in that spot, but that's just something to consider because if you're someone that wants to hold the phone like an actual digital camera, it might throw you off because you can't hold it sideways if you have shorter fingers.
Yeah.
You have to put your hand over the display to make sure that it can click pretty good.
Yeah, it seems like with the camera control button, Apple, I think, took a compromise of they're thinking the majority of the people hold their phone like this, like in portrait, whenever they take their photos.
Yeah.
So it's really easy to adjust with your thumb. But it's only whenever you go into landscape that it's a little bit too far.
Right.
And I have large hands, right? It's still a little bit too far.
Especially if you want to zoom in or do any of those gestures.
Right, yeah. Right. So that's a little interesting. And you also have the option now to do spatial photos and videos. Let's say you own
if you have an Apple Vision Pro.
Yeah. Let's say you own the ultra expensive Vision Pro. You can actually see spatial photos and videos on it. It might be good for the future if Apple decides to release a Vision Pro that is relatively affordable for everyone.
Right.
That'd be pretty cool. But
And
that's also here.
Yeah, I wonder if that's what they're doing. They're just including it now so you can start taking those pictures and memories ultimately in that mode. So if you get one at some point later, you can just watch them and see them.
Yeah. Cameras are good.
So here's the thing. Thank you for saying, by the way, but ultimately this phone is really interesting because Apple made some really intriguing decisions when it comes to their base model, the iPhone 16, compared to the iPhone 16 Pro. And by that, I mean, we talked about it through the video, but we're looking at a similar size, a package that includes the new hardware feature being the camera button, last year's premium button, the action button, a better camera system, quote, opinion, end quote, better design, and better color choice. So it's very interesting that they went this way because we've known Apple over the years, they kind of separate the models that they offer into a way that you're kind of stuck into one option and you have no way of going to the other one because you're compromising too much. In this case, you're not. You can, in less than one hand, you can count the features that you're missing out if you go for a 16 versus a 16 Pro. But it's I don't know, man. It's one of those things that you have to try it out. You have to see if you really care about the display difference, not having ProMotion or always on. If you really care about not having titanium and having aluminum, and not really caring about the pro camera features and that one extra lens.
Yeah, that's three, literally. Display, camera, like one additional camera.
One camera.
And then titanium. Those are the only differences.
It's wild.
Yeah. Now, here's the thing in terms of pricing, because the pricing, in my opinion, is a little iffy.
Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, they started 128 gigabytes. I said it about the Pixel, and I will say it here too.
Yeah.
In 2024, I do not like flagship smartphones starting at 128 gigabytes of storage, especially if, let's say, you are like myself and you buy your phones unlocked and not through a carrier. It is $829 to buy this phone unlocked with 128 gigs of storage in 2024 with a 60 hertz refresh rate display, right? Now, let's say you wanted to future-proof the device a little bit. You're going to opt for 256. That's $100 more. $929 before tax for a 256 gigabyte smartphone that still does not have a high refresh rate display. Now, it gets even worse if you want to up to 512. That's actually the storage that my Pro Max has.
And this is the wild thing for sure.
Yeah, $200 increase over the 256. So you're going to go from $929 to $1,129. If you spend $1,129 on a flagship iPhone that does not come with a ProMotion display, we're going to have a talk.
Yeah.
Because, so like, and they're in a little bit of a weird space. So let me get the colors out of the way first, and then I'll kind of give my opinion on the pricing and stuff. So 5 colors, I like all of them. Teal, pink, ultramarine, which is the best one, and then you have your classic colors, black and white, right?
Yeah.
So the 16 is in this kind of strange spot where I feel like for the features they're still a little overpriced.
Right.
But
yeah.
Apple's done a really good job of bridging the gap especially in terms of hardware features between Pro and standard iPhone. So here's my thoughts on it, right?
Yeah.
You either reduce the cost of each storage option by like $100, and then I think this kind of has a really good value proposition then.
Perfect phone,
Yeah,
probably.
right?
Yeah.
Or if you're going to maintain these prices and you're not going to include ProMotion, then if anything, Apple needs to step up the game on the Pro level models. Because hypothetically speaking, if this phone came with ProMotion,
Right.
I really don't see why too many people outside of like professional photographers and videographers
Right.
would go for the Pro model. And even then, they're probably carrying Pro level hardware that's not an iPhone, right?
Exactly. They already have a digital camera or something with them.
Yeah.
It's interesting. And honestly, it'll be really interesting because all rumors point for next year's phone, the 17, not the Pro, but the 17 to have
ProMotion.
Yeah, ProMotion.
Yeah.
120 hertz display.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's a good point. I just don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. And it's like I always carry an Android phone with me too. And Android phones have had high refresh rates for like 10 years now.
Yeah.
So it's just like it's something that I consistently have, whether it's my iPad Pro, an Android flagship phone, the flagship iPhone Pros for some years now. It's just something that I personally can't get used to, especially if I'm going to spend close to $1,000 after tax.
That's the biggest thing. That's the biggest argument is the fact that the amount of money you're spending doesn't. It's a weird compromise that you should have that by default.
Yeah. Apple needs to bring back the SE and have that at 60 hertz. Both standard iPhone Pro model need to have ProMotion, and the Pros need to actually become Pros again.
Yeah.
That's what needs to happen with the iPhone lineup.
2024, make iPhone Pros again.
Yeah. But that just about does it for us. If you're new here, consider subscribing. We are really close to 25,000. I was hoping 25 before the year is over. We might just break that before October's over.
And I'm really thankful.
Yeah.
We're really thankful.
And we have a lot more stuff coming. So if you enjoyed this, consider hitting subscribe down below. We'll see you very soon.
Till the next one.
Peace. You hear Darth Plagueis died of ligma?
Who is Darth Plagueis?
Oh man,
That's recorded.
Yeah, I know. Outro. Let's do this.